Hey everyone, back again for my next deck profile, and today I'll be doing an update video on one of my personal favorites, the Monarchs. Now this deck is considered a rogue anti-meta deck, does not run an extra deck, mainly because you kind of can't, but I still like the Monarchs personally. I like to play them, just for the fun of it, and sometimes they do hold their own really well against the top meta decks, as long as you play them correctly. And yeah, I really think that the Emperor of Darkness is still one of the better structure decks to pick up, so if you still see them around in stores, definitely pick them up and try Monarchs out for yourself. Anyway, let's get right to it. Starting off, we run 3 of our boss monster. Erebus, the Underworld Monarch. Really excellent guy, solely because his ability does not target. But here's what he does. Like, if you tribute summon him, you get to send 2 Monarch Speller Traps to the graveyard. And also, you can target, or rather, I'm sorry, it doesn't target, but you send 1 card from your opponent's hand, field, or graveyard back to his deck. So, like, yeah, he basically shuffles back, and also he has a really cool graveyard effect, too. If this card is in your graveyard, you can send 1 Monarch Speller Trap. You can either add him or any other monster with 2400 or more attack with 1000 defense from your grave back to your hand. So it really comes in handy. Especially if you need to recycle one of your powerful Monarch monsters, especially him, so definitely run him at 3. Next up, we got 2, Caius the Mega Monarch. Really badass guy. If you tribute summon this guy using a Dark-type monster, here's what you can do. Well, generally when he's tribute summoned, you can banish 1 dark monster on your opponent's, you can banish 1 monster on your opponent's side of the field, or any card, I believe. And if it's a dark monster, you can banish all copies of that card. So, like, let's say you're up against Dark Magician, you banish it, and boom, every copy of Dark Magician leaves the field, like leaves the duel for good. And also, if you tribute a dark type monster to summon this guy, you get to target 2 cards on your opponent's side of the field instead of just 1. So it really comes in handy. So, like, again, Dark Magician, they'd be screwed if they lose every copy of Dark Magician. Even a Prince's Illusion would be completely useless if they get banished. So yeah, Caius, definitely run him at 2. He's still an amazing card. I wish this card was at least at 2. I would run 2 of her and 2 Erebus, but 1 Ether. Reason she's limited is because her ability is somewhat broken. Maybe she is broken, I don't know. But anyway, if you tribute summon her, like Erebus, you send 2 Monarch Speller Traps to the grave, and you can special summon 1 Monarch, or 1 monster, with 2400 or more attack, as long as it has 1000 defense. And also, during your opponent's main phase, you can banish 1 Monarch Speller Trap from your graveyard. Immediately after that resolves, you can tribute summon this card, and it's a quick effect. So, essentially, you could tribute this monster during your opponent's turn. And then, yeah, it's like, she's just really good for that reason. Alright, next up we run 2 Majesty's Fiend, mainly because he's searchable, and you can use him for tenacity. But if you can simultaneously get him and the next monster that I'm about to show you right now, Vanity's Fiend, you can literally put a lot of decks on lockdown. Majesty's Fiend keeps your opponent from activating monster effects, and it affects you too, but if it's a non-active effect, then you're pretty much fine. Vanity's Fiend keeps your opponent from special summoning, which is really great, because like a lot of decks are all about special summoning. So if you can simultaneously get these 2 out, your opponent's on total lockdown, and it's really hard to get around those 2. Unless they have a Dark Hole, then that's going to be their only out, but there is a way to protect them from that, which I'll get to later. Oh, but be aware that Vanity's Fiend has 1200 defense, so you will not be able to use him for Return of the Monarchs or Tenacity, but I don't recommend running him at 3 because he will start to get bricky at 3. So I always try to keep it at least 2 and 2. Alright, moving on to our Squire and Vassal engine. We have triple Idea, the Heavenly Squire. When this card is normal or special summoned, you can special summon 1 monster with 800 attack and 1000 defense from your deck. And also, if this card leaves the field, you get to target 1 banished Monarch Speller Trap and add that back to your hand. So it's really great. And of course, her ability is a hard once per turn, so you can't really stack these. Like, a lot of people who used to play Monarchs tend to do that. They'd like to try to stack that ability, but it doesn't work. So yeah, it's hard once per turn, and that's it. But the main monster you want to aim for is Eidos, using her summoning ability. Because if Eidos is special or normal summon, you get to tribute summon an additional time in addition to your normal summon. And also you can banish this guy, special summon 1 monster with 800 attack with 1000 defense from your graveyard. So like if both he and Adia are in your graveyard, you could literally Use that ability. Use that. Bring the duo out again on the next turn. That we can start tribute summoning again and just kind of like boost your advantage. And lastly, we got 2 Link Slayers. If I had a third, I would run a third, but for now, I think 2 is still fine. Like, he's just, the only reason I run him is just because he's a free summon as long as you control no monsters. And once per turn, you can target 2 cards. Well, you can discard up to 2 cards and target that many speller traps on your opponent's side of the field and destroy them. So that's why I run him personally. Just because he's a little bit better than Kaiser Force Rider and Photon Thrasher. Alright, moving on to the spells. We have Triple Domain of the True Monarchs. Amazing field spell. As long as you control a Tribute Summon monster, your opponent cannot access his extra deck. And also, Tribute Summon monsters gain 800 attack during the damage calculation when you engage in battle to one of your opponent's monsters, but it only works if you attack. And once per turn, you can reduce the level of one monster with 2800 attack with 1000 defense in your hand by 2 until the end of the turn, even after they are summoned or set. And it also works even if this card leaves the field. So if you resolve that effect and someone decides to ghost over it, you're still going to be able to resolve that level down effect. So that's also why it's so good. Alright, next up we got probably the best searcher in the entire deck. Triple Tenacity. As long as you can reveal one monster with 2400 or 2800 attack with 1000 defense, and add any Monarch spell or trap except itself to your hand. So it's a good way to search out your limited cards like Monarch Stormforth, Pantheism, and speaking of which, Pantheism, even though it's at 1, it's still really powerful because you can essentially recycle it. So yeah, that's why I think Pantheism, even at 1, I wish it were at 2. That way it's easier to draw into, but you know, it's one of the most broken draw powered cards in the game, so that's why it's got to stay at 1. But I'm not complaining too much. Moving on, we got 2 Return of the Monarchs. I know it's like the most specific spell card ever, but it's pretty straightforward. Whenever you perform a tribute summon, once per turn, you can add one monster with 2400 or 2800 attack with 1000 defense from your deck to your hand, and literally just overly specifies that with Return of the Monarch, so I'm not going to read through it all, but both those little black dots pretty much just say that. And next up we also got 2 March of the Monarchs. This is how you pretty much protect your Majesties and Vanity's Fiend if you can manage to get them out as well. As long as this card is out, your opponent cannot target your Tribute Summon monsters or destroy them by card effects. So that's why it's so good. And then of course for the single Monarch cards we have, as I mentioned, Pantheism, which is only available at 1 right now. And then, what this does is like, you discard 1 Monarch Spell Trap, draw 2 cards, and you can banish this card from your graveyard, select any 3 Monarch Spell Traps, and your opponent gets to choose one of those to add to your hand. So you could literally pick all 3 copies of your Tenacity. It does not specify if they have to be different names. So essentially you're not going to give your opponent a choice, and you can pretty much get a win-win no matter what. So it's a good way, it's also a good way to bleed out your deck. That way you can get to the cards you do need a lot faster. And also, moving on, we also have Monarch Stormforth, which also is at 1, as I mentioned. But whenever you perform a tribute summon, you get to tribute off one of your opponent's monsters as well. So like if you have a monster that requires 2 tributes, you can tribute off one of your monsters and your opponent's monsters. So it's basically a quick play version of Soul Exchange. So that's why it's so good. But yeah, that's it for the Monarch spells. For the spells that I use outside of the Monarchs, I run 2 Foolish Burial Goods, 1 Foolish Burial. Foolish Burial Goods is good because you want to also get Pantheism to the grave. You also want to get the Prime Monarch to the grave. So that's why it's an amazing card. And Foolish Burial, of course, it's at 1, but it's a good way to send Erebus to the grave as well. Because Erebus, like I said, does have a really excellent graveyard effect. And in case if you don't open up with a boss Monarch monster, you can definitely add him to your hand if you have plenty of Monarch Speller Traps to spare. We also have 1 for 1, because Adia is level 1, and you also want to try to summon her out as quickly as possible. And then, of course, if you want to search out Adia, we got Reinforcements of the Army. So, like, definitely Rhoda's definitely a must for this deck, so I highly recommend these. We only run 5 traps, but the big 3 that we want to run is Prime Monarch, because this lets you banish any Monarch Speller Trap other than itself from the grave, and you can special summon it as a monster from your graveyard. It has 2400 defense, so it's really good, and it's also you can also summon it during your opponent's turn because in the graveyard it's treated as a trap card. So definitely a must to have, and plus you could use it for tribute material. We have one escalation of the Monarchs, so if you combo this off with Monarch Stormforth, escalation lets you tribute summon once per turn during your opponent's main or battle phase, and also if you have Monarch Stormforth set and you play this together, you can tribute off one of your opponent's monsters and summon out one of your Monarchs. So that's why escalation's still great. And of course we have one Monarchs Erupt, only one, just because like it's just skill drain, and also you can bring it back through Prime Monarch's trap card effect and Adia's effect if you banished it using to summon it or whatever. So like that's why I feel like just one is enough. And plus True Dracos like to use it too. So like, and if I was up against True Dracos, that card would not hurt me at all because every monster I summon is going to be tribute summoned. So yeah, and that's pretty much it for the Monarch deck. Really hope you guys enjoyed it. So I'll catch you on the next one.